way with the Mishnah on the bottom of Tzadi Gimel and Beis. Zev Echad, Zev Echad Einu Einus, Shnei Zevim Einus. We know that a shayl, is even a shayl is chayv is einisim, but a shem sacher or a shem chinam pater on einisim. What is considered an einis for a roya? So if there's one wolf that's not an einis, he could have chased it away. Shnei zevim einis. Rabbi Yehuda b'shas mishlachsim zevim av zev echad einis. At the time that wolves are running wild, then they're emboldened. So even a single wolf is an einis. Shnei klavim ein einis. Two dogs are not an einis. He could even chase away two dogs. Even two dogs are considered an einis. If they're coming from two separate directions, it's too hard for him to protect himself from two dogs. Halistim hareza einis. Robbers is an einis. The Rashi has a girza halistim, a single list. Hari, a lion, hadoiv, a bear, hanamar, a leopard, habardless. Bardless, I think, a kind of like from the feline family. A hanachash and a snake kareiloinus. Amos mai bizan shabar lelein. That's when they come on their own. But if he decides to go to the Bronx, or if he goes by the watering hole in Africa, that's not an einis. He exposed the animals in that case to the danger. Mesa kadarka reza einis. If it dies, if the animal dies on its own and on the normal course of events, that's also an einis. Safko mesa, if he basically tortured it and died. Rashi says he caused it to be hungry, it made it thirsty, or he put it out in the sun. Ein einis. If the animal then dies, it's the fault of the shem. Also, l'Rashi tzuken v'nafla. If the animal went on itself up to the top of a mountain, hareza einis. If you remember, we came across this. Where was it again? What is this little vav? Back on Lamed Vav. I guess that's a good couple of months ago. We said over there, it's talking about where the animal forced its way up, couldn't stop it. But if the shepherd brought him to the top of the mountain and then the animal fell down, that's the fault of the shepherd. It's not nice. So about Tanya, we learned that a zevach is an einis. Talking about the case the Mishnah said, it's talking about when the Avim are running around. Halistim hareza einis. Amai luki gavra lahadi gavra. Why is a single robber an einis? Let him stand up to the robber and chase him away. Amarav balistim mezuyim. Rav says it's talking about an armed robber. That's not an einis. Ibaylahu listim mezuyim v'roya mezuyim ma'u. What's the din if the roya has a concealed carry permit? Is it still considered einis? Do we say do we say stand up? You have just as much of a chance as the robber. You have the same gun. But you could say no. Listen. Whenever they're going to rob, they know there's a chance the guy's going to stand up to them, so they're willing to put their lives on the line just on the fact that they're a gunner, that they're going around mugging people. But Roya has no obligation to stop people, so it remains an einis. A very applicable question. We're on the bottom of Tzadi Gimel on the base. We said if a shamer comes across a listim and there's a single robber, he's not an einis because he could fight him off. He could he's coming with his hands and fists. He's coming to steal his thing. So the shamer should fight him. What happens if it's an armed robber and an armed shamer? We say an armed shamer should also fight him off. Well, it says no. It's an obvious para that you're not going to sacrifice your life. You're not going to risk your life to save property. Mustaver the high masanafshi or high masanafshi. It's more mustaver that the ganef will risk his life, but not the shame. Amalei abayla rabba. Bottom line of Tzadi Gimel Beis. Ashkechei roya va'amalei gamba sayi b'duchte pchana. If a roya found this guy, this potential ganef, and he basically dared him. He said to him, "I want you to know, we have yes." So he found this ganef saria, this horrible ganef. And he told this ganef, "We have 10 shepherds that are waiting for you. Ikabadan. We got 20 dogs. And we have 30 slingshots prepared to fight you off." And then this ganef took it as a challenge, and he got together all of his friends, and he robbed from him. Do we say, is that the fact that you challenged the robber, you gave him the whole, you laid out all your defenses, is that pshia, or it makes it at least not an onus on the part of the raya, that he basically told him exactly what it is, and then the ganef went and overcame it? Or, I mean, to me it would seem to say like he was trying to chase him off by saying, but the Gemara is clearing, maybe it's considered that you basically dared him, and therefore that's why he did it. Since he says no, it's the same thing as what we said before, that if you lead the animal to a place where you know there are robbers and a place where you know that there are wild animals, the shomer is going to be chayiv. Basically, you did the same thing. You told him exactly where you were and what you had, so you made it that it's no longer an einus that you were robbed. It's the fault of the shomer. Zok the Mishnah. Masna shomer chinam lias potter mishvua. A shomer chinam could be masna. A shomer chinam is potter, as we're going to be seeing over the next few blocks. Shomer chinam is potter for everything besides a pshia. But if it's gneva vaveda or an einus, he's going to make a shvua and be potter. A shomer chinam can make a t'nai that I'm only accepting the shmira. I'm going to ask that I don't have to make a shvua if it's stolen or lost, or if it's an einus. I'm just going to be potter altogether. A shayil can make a shvua, least potter milashalom. He could say, I'm not, listen, I want to borrow it, but I'm only borrowing it out tonight that I don't have to pay if it's stolen or lost. And the nice sacher can make a t'nai that he doesn't want to make a shvua if it's an einus, and he doesn't want to have to pay if it's gneva baveda. You can make t'naim on the terms of the bureau.
Exactly. A shomer chinam is only chayiv if it's a shia, right?
Yeah. Right. So he can make. I don't want to make a shvua if there's an einus, for example.
Right. A shomer sacher is only potter if it's.
He's potter for an einus.
Right.
But he will be chayiv for pshia or gneva v'aveda.
And a shayil and a nice sacher.
Well, a nice sacher is a nice sacher. You're talking about a seicher. A seicher is the machlekes, whether it's like a shomer chinam or a shomer sacher. A shayil is going to be chayiv even on einsin. He's only going to be potter in mesa machas olacho or ba'alim imay, unusual cases, but generally a shayil is chayiv. So a shayil can only, his t'nai is going to be that he's potter, that he doesn't have to pay. He's not going to make. He rarely makes a shvua, right? He wouldn't make a shvua about ba'alim imay and mesa machas olacho. I guess we don't really consider that. It's an unusual case. But in any case, the point of this Mishnah is that anyone can make a t'nai to change the terms of the agreement. Anyone who makes a t'nai on what's written in the Torah, his t'nai is batal. That means the deal is going to go through, but the t'nai will be disregarded, which is pretty much the opposite of what we just said. The Gemara will explain why. T'nai batal. we have to, as we're going to see, the T'nai, everything about T'naim is learned from the T'nai Bnei Gad Bnei Ruvain. We had this back in Kedushin. So the T'nai Bnei Gad Bnei Ruvain is T'nai Koidem Lamaisa. You have to first make the T'nai, say, if you do this, then that. If you, as we'll see the examples that the Gemara will provide. But, if someone says, I'm buying this, I'm going to buy this car from you, but you have to then, if in order for this purchase to go through, you have to jump 10 times, that's a Maisa Kaidem L'Tanai. He has to say, is jump 10 times, and then I'll sell the car to you. Or I'll give you this car. The type of Tanai that's going to work is a Tanai that a person is able to be Mekayim. With the inference from this is, if you make a Tanai that the sun will stop shining tomorrow, then it's not then the Tanai is not Mekayim. We ignore the Tanai. And the Gemara is going to go into detail about that as well. Now the Gemara goes back to the first thing that we said, that a Shemer can make a Tanai to change the terms. In fact, the Gemara, why can the Shemer make such Tanai? Masal Mashakasu B'Torah. B'chol Masal Mashakasu B'Torah Tanai bottle. So the Gemara, Hamani Rabbi Yehudi, is Rabbi Yehudi Da'amar B'Davar Shemamon Tanai Kayim. This din of a Masal Mashakasu B'Torah is only things that are not mominous. If he's talking about things that the Torah requires a person to do. But if he's masna, and mammon is subject to contract. You can contract what you want to do with your money. The Tanya. He says, I want you to be Mekudeshes to me, but I want to make a Tanai that I don't have to provide you with clothing, which a husband normally has to provide, and I don't have to provide you with food, and I don't have to provide you with Tash Shamita. Hareza Mukudeshes, she is Mukudeshes, Utnai bottle. The whole Tanai is bottled because the Torah provides that he has to provide these things. The Torah says that he has to provide her with clothing and with mezainis and with Tash Shamita. Divrei Meir. Yehuda is Mechalik. He says it depends. Legabi the Oino Eina Chanami. The Tanai is bottled and he has to provide it. But the share and the ksus, the mezainis and the clothing, that's a mominous. The Torah provided the mominous, and he can make a Tanai to take it away. Can you say our mission is going like Rabbi Yehuda? Say for Kol Hamasa Mashakasu B'Torah Tanai bottle at the Rameya. Our Mishnah says Kol Hamasa Mashakasu B'Torah Tanai bottle, and we're not mechalik between which Tanai it is. So that sounds like Rameya. No, when the Mishnah says, when our Mishnah says, it's talking about everything except for Mammon, which is very interesting, right? Because we're talking about the case, our Mishnah just said a Tanai, which is a Tanai of Mammon. Then it says, so we're saying the Mishnah is telling us the din when it's not Mammon to contrast it with what the Mishnah just said. It should have been a little more clear if that was the point. In fact, the Gemara kol tanai sheyesh b'maisa b'tichlasoi tanai bottle. If you have a tanai where it was maisa kaidem l'tanai, it's going to be tanai bottle. Man shamalei de islay hasvar. Who's the man the Amr who holds that you have to have tanai kaidem l'maisa, not maisa kaidem l'tanai? Remeya the Tanya. Because you'll learn after Tanai Bnei Gad Bnei Ruvain. So how could we say our Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda if we're saying in the sake of the Mishnah that you need Tanai Koydem L'Maisa, which is Rameya's Shita? The whole Mishnah is Rameya. Over here it's different. Even though Rameya holds you can't make a Tanai on a Davar Sheba Mammon, over here, the person never took upon himself the Shemira. It means it's not Masna Masha Kasa B'Torah. What he's doing is he's never entering into the Shemira, the Raisadik Shemira. He's limiting his Shemira to this. So that kind of t'nai you could do. We say that a Shem Esacha, we have a brayz that says, a Shem Esacha can make a t'nai to be like a shell. B'mai b'dvarim. How can he do that? How can he just make a t'nai just b'dvarim? How can he be masna? How can it be kaina something that he's going to now be meshubed without a kinyan? I'm a shmuel b'shekana miyadin. Shmuel says einachanami has to be that he taka made a kinyan. Even without a kinyan. The Shomer, even though he's even though this Shomer Sachar took upon himself a higher level. So you say, how can he accept a higher level upon himself without a kinyan? The Gemara says there's a kinyan because he's getting something in return. He's getting that he's going to be treated. Everyone's going to know that he's a good Shomer. It's good advertising for him that he takes upon himself the din of Shmira, and that with that he's able to be Gaimer u Machne himself. We said any T'nai which he is able to be Mekayim, which is theoretically, at least it's possible to be Mekayim, that's a T'nai. But the inference from the Mishnah is that if it's not possible, it's not. Amrav Tav L'Amarav. Zu Div Reb Yehuda ben Tema. This is Reb Yehuda ben Tema Shita, that a T'nai that's impossible to complete is not a T'nai. The inference of a Mishnah. There's no T'nai Kayim. It is such a T'nai, an impossible T'nai is a good T'nai. The Tanya. Hareze Gitech. This is your get. Amnasha Tal L'Rakia. Amnas that you're going to go up to the Shemayim. Amnasha Terdi L'Tahoim. Amnas that you go down to the depths of the sea. Amnasha Kanashal Me'ama. You swallow a stick that's 100 amas long. Amnasha Tavri Esayam Hagadol Baraglecha. You'll walk across the sea. The sky matnai hareza get. If he's makayim the tanai, then it is a good get. Now, one immediately wonders how could someone be makayim such as tanai? But we say it's talil rakia. We just saw the Starlink took off. What is it? Starship? Elon Musk Starship took off yesterday. So the guy got a rocket ship and he went to Shemayim. He went to the heavens. That's going to be a good tanai. But if he did, but the point is that this t'nai is a valid t'nai, and in order for the kedushin to take place, for the get to be a valid get, or the t'nai has to be mekoyim. Rabbi Yehuda ben Taimai because that get, he says no, you just ignore the t'nai, and it's a good get because this is a t'nai shemitchilasa, it's not shy. Rabbi Yehuda ben Taimai kol sheyefshel lekayim b'sayfai based on mitchilasa and elek mafliga b'kasha. Rabbi Yehuda ben Taimai gives the reason. He says anyone who makes a t'nai that's not shaykh to be mekoyim, he's only trying to drive her crazy, but he doesn't really mean this t'nai. He really means the mice, the mice that he was intending. So over here he was giving a get, and he made a crazy type of t'nai. We just ignore the crazy t'nai. Halach Rabbi Yehuda ben Taimai. Halach like Rabbi Yehuda ben Taimai that you have that a crazy t'nai is disregard. Kol she'afshel l'kayim b'sayfa v'hisla mitchasei t'nai kayim. V'afshel l'kayim b't'nai botol shma mina. That's the mashmayis of our Mishnah from the inference of our Mishnah. We're up to the next pair. Hadron Allah Hasoichas Apayalin. And now we're up to Hashelas Apara, which is starts off with heavy duty Shemrim. So we're just going to remind ourselves. I meant to look up a Chumash. Let me grab a Chumash quickly. That one? Oh, thank you. Perfect.
Well, hold on. What was the raya from the Mishnah? Rabbi Yehuda ben Taimai says that it is a good get, right?
Right. It's t'nai kaim. It's a good. The t'nai is a valid t'nai. The mashma. Well, no. It's our Mishnah is saying if it's possible for it to happen, then the t'nai is a valid t'nai. The mashma says if it's something that it's not efshel kaimai, it's not a valid t'nai. We disregard the t'nai, not the ma'isa. The ma'isa, the subject of the t'nai remains valid. Right. So where is it? Shmois Chaf Beis. Just had this a couple of months ago. This is the psukim of Shomer. So the pasuk starts. First it starts Kitin Ish Areo Kasav Kelim Lishma V'Gunam Beis Ish Matzagana V'Shalom Shnai. That's the parsha of Shomer Chinam is the first parsha from psukim Vav to pasuk Tes. Then the Chumash starts Kitin Ish Areo Chamara Ishar Yiseh V'Chol Behem Lishmar. That's a Shomer Sachar. And then pasuk Yud Gimel Kishal Ishmeim Re'ev Nishbar Meitz Balav Imay Einimay Balav Einimay Shalom Yishalom. Okay, so we have the psuk. Zok the Gemara, Zok the Mishnah. Hashelas Apara, B'Shah Balei Ima, Isacha Balei Ima. If someone borrowed a par, and together with borrowing the par, he also asked, "Could you work for me? The owner of the par, could you please work for me? Help me out." Isacha Balei Ima, if he hired the owner of the par to work with him. Shal Habaylam Ischaron, or if he had asked the owner of the par to work to help him out, to lend him his services, Isachron, or he hired the owner of the par, and while he's still in his service, the owner of the par is still in his service, at that point he borrowed the par. Umesa, and the animal died with an einus, which normally he's a shayl. A shayl is normally chayiv. He's going to be pater. Shenemer in bal of imay lo yishalim. If the owner is with him, he doesn't have to pay. So we said there were 3 parshas of Shemrim. That's the 3rd parsha of Sheila, of Shayl. Yishal ishme imre yehu. If someone borrows from his friend, the nishbar emes, and it breaks or it dies, the animal breaks its leg or it dies. If the owner is not with him at the time that the animal died or that the animal broke, then he has to pay. But the mashma is that if the owner was with him, then he doesn't have to pay. So that's what we learn out, the heter, that if the ball of his imay, if the bailim are working together with the shemer, if the owner of the thing is working with the shemer, then it's pater. Avol sholas apara v'achach sholas abaylam v'sachron umesa chayiv. If the sequence of events was different, that it wasn't that the owner of the para had been hired prior to the shelas para, or at the same time, but rather first he borrowed the para, and then afterwards he hired the owner of the para, then he's going to be chayiv. Shenemer balav ein imay shalom mishalom. It has to be balav imay b'shas the she'ela. The crucial point is at the time of when he borrowed the para. If at that time the owner was hired by him, then he's going to be pater for any subsequent oimsim, or even we're going to see gneva mesa. But if he first borrowed and then later hired him, that's not going to be enough. It's not going to help that he was hired at the time that the oinus happened. It has to be that the owner of the para was hired at the time of the original shayl. Dr. Gemara. Migdatani said v'achach shalas apara l'chal dereisha tani ima mamish. And the fact that we say the second case, right? We said where he first hired the owner and then he borrowed the para. That's mash. But the first case was he did both at exactly the same time. How is that possible? Para mashicha bailam ba'amira. How could you have the two things? They're acquired in different ways. The para, he is going to be mechayiv in the she'ela at the time that he does mashicha, and the bailam, when he says I'm hiring you, that's when he's going to be hired. We're talking about where the par was in the chatzar of the shayl, and all he didn't have to do mashicha. All he had to say is right now, he says at 2 p.m., I want to both hire you to be my worker, as well as I want this par that's in my rishus to be nikna to me. So then that's how you can have them both at the same time. Or if he makes it tonight, he says that I only want your she'ela. I'm sorry, you, it means the services that the owner becomes hired to me, I don't want it to take effect until Mashiach. Tanan Hasam, Arba Shaimim, there are 4 Shaimim. Shemechinam v'ashayel noisasacha v'asaycha. Someone who works for free, who watches for free, a shell, someone who borrows, noisasacha, someone who's paid to watch, v'asaycha, and someone who rents. Shemechinam nishba alakol. Shemechinam makes a shua on anything other than a pshia. Whatever happens to the object, to the pikadon, the shemechinam makes a shua and he's going to be pat. Shayel pays under all circumstances, except for very rare circumstances, like we said, balavim, or it's meisa machas malacha. But any other case, even if it's an einus, he has to pay. This is according to the Manda Amar that a noisus, that a seicha, a renter, is treated the same as a nois, as a shemus sacher. So both of them make a shvua if it's broken, which is an oinus, ala shvuya if it's captured, ala mesa if it died. But they are chayiv on gneva v'aveda. That means they can't make a shvua because they have to pay. Where does this come from? It's not Rabban. Parsha Rishon never b'shem. Like we said, the first parsha of Ki yitei nishareo kesav v'kein lishmar v'guna beisa ishi v'motzah gan v'sham shnayim. That's talking about a Shem Echinam. Shniya b'Shem Esacha. The second one, Kita Nisharei Chamar Sar Keseh, is a Shem Esacha. Shlishis b'Shel. Talking about Bishlam Shlishis b'Shel Mefurish. The third parsha starts Ki Yishal Ish Me'im Re'ehu. If a person borrowed, so that's how we know that's talking about a shayl. The pasuk says directly it's talking about shayla. How do I know that the first one is a shemechinam, where we say that one ends off and says, "Al kol dvar pesha al shava chama al sal shalma shleshi yom kuzeh alikim yaved dvar shneim." We say whether it's an aveda, then he goes to and he makes a shvua. So that's talking. We say that's talking about a shemechinam. How do you know that's talking about a shemechinam? And the shnia is a shem esacha. Maybe the shnia which says he's chayiv on gneva aveda. How do you know it's a shem esacha? Eipachano. Maybe the shem echinim is the one who's chayiv for gneva aveda, and the shem esacha is potter. So the Gemara mistaber sheba shem esacha shein chayiv gneva aveda. The Gemara says, well, it's obvious svar, right? A shem echinam who's working for free, so it sounds like he should be potter on more than a shem esacha who is being paid to work. The Gemara, Adarabba, Rishayna b'Shem B'Sacha. I would say the other way around. Shechem Misham Tashul Mekefel B'Tani Tainas Ganav. In the first case, it said, "V'Guna V'Beisa Ish Yimatza Ganav Yishalom Shnayim." We say that if the Shomer steals it and he tries to make a shvua to be potter, which a Shem Echinim does, then we find that it was stolen. The Shem Echinim has to pay kefil. So maybe that din is said by a Shem Esacha. That means maybe the first parsha, which requires the Shemer to pay kefil, if it turns out that he stole it for himself, right? He claims it was stolen, he really took it for himself, he pays kefil, that's not shaykh by a Shem Esacha, because if he would make a shvua that it was stolen, he'd be chayiv anyway. So Gemara, no. Avilu hachi, cannibal shvua adifa. It doesn't make any sense. It's true that there is a specific case in which the Shem Echinim ends up worse, that if he steals it, he has to pay kefil to the owner, but it's still better to not have to pay Karen than it is to have to pay kefil in the case where he kept it for himself. Okay, I'll prove it to you. The shayil kol hana shaloi. A shayil, shayil's only getting. He gets nothing out of this. He's not providing anything. He just borrows the thing and he gets to use it. He's not a ganav when he uses it. Everything, he gets all the hana of this situation. He's totally yadei alal yaina. Ve'einu Mishalem el Karen. And a shayl still, there's no such thing that he pays kefil. So therefore, it can't be that, it must be that Karen is adifa. If you say that kefil is better, then a shayl should have to pay. We should say that a shayl is going to be able to make a shavua on gneva v'aveda in order that he should be able to pay the kefil if he steals it for himself. From the fact that a shayl who has the most advantageous situation, klape the owner, that he's getting all the hana, and even so, he only pays Karen, he doesn't pay kefil, vice versa, that Karen, it's better for a shomer to be potter from paying Karen on gneva v'aveda than to have to, then even though that will get him out of having to pay kefil. Is it true that all the hana goes to the shayl? He has to provide food for the animal while he's watching it. So no, he doesn't always have to provide food. There are cases where he's going to sometimes he lives in the marsh, in the meadow, and he'll let the animal graze, and he won't have to provide for it anything. But he still has to watch the animal, but not their masa. Gemara says no, it wouldn't even have to have that. In a case where there's a communal watchman who everyone pays for, he's paid for by taxes, and he watches everything. Gemara says in this whole line of reasoning is really not relevant. The point is that a shayl gets the most of anyone. Relative to a shemachinam and a shemasachar, he certainly gets more than they do. It doesn't have to be that he gets every single pitchifka of hana, that there's no downside to him at all. The point is he gets more than them. He gets a roiv hana, so he's better than the shemachinam. And even so, we say he is chayiv in keren for gneva v'aved, and he doesn't pay kefil. So vice versa, it's a chumrah to have to pay Karen, and not, even though that patters you, it makes it impossible for you to be chayiv kefil. B'ibay sema she'elis kalim. Oh, we could talk about she'elis kalim. You're talking about all the different hana that he could have. He has to watch it and he has to feed it. If he borrows a kli, none of those things are relevant, so he gets only hana from it. I mean, even though there's obviously some kind of shmira, but when we're talking about animals, it's typical that you have to have a shepherd. You have to pay someone to watch it on a daily basis. It's constant shmira, but a kli, you basically put it into your house and lock it up. So we say, the Brisa says that a noisa sachar and the seicher, both of them are, we said in our Mishnah, they're equivalent. They make a shvua that on an oinus, that it was broken, ala shvura, ala shvi, if it was captured, ala mesa, if it died. Or mishalman is aveda, it's like neva, but they pay for gneva aveda. Bishlam gneva, they'll im gun of yignav. Me'ima yishalem abalim. The Torah says specifically, im gun of yignav in the parsha of Shem Esacha. Ela aveda minale. How do we know if it's lost that he is also chayiv to pay the owner, that he can't make a shvua and pat himself? The Tanya, im gun of yignav, ainly aligneva aveda minayin tamlema, im gun of yignav mikol makar. The pasuk says gun of yignav. It says an extra word. This is only good according to the Mandam. It says the Torah didn't use colloquialisms. So therefore, when it says gun of yignav, it's coming to teach you something. If you say the Torah uses colloquialism, so how can you prove anything from the fact that it says in gun of yignav? The Torah was just speaking in a normal way. We can learn it from a kal v'chaymer. Mishalem, a gneva, listen to us, certainly we would think a gneva is closer to being an oinus than an aveda is, right? Gneva means someone else came and stole it from you. That's less on the shomer. He couldn't expect that to happen. But aveda shekroivel pshia, an aveda, if he lost it, that seems, I mean, between you and me, when I deal with my kids, if they tell me they lost something, they lost a knapsack, I don't look at it as an oinus, I look at it as a pshia. They're going to get docked like their cookie for a snack for like 3 seconds till they cry, and then they'll get it. but it's certainly one can understand that a gneva is closer to an einus than aved is. So, like Kolshikin, certainly if he's going to be chayiv, if the Shem Sacher is chayiv for gneva, like the Torah says, he's also going to be chayiv for aveda, which is more of his responsibility. Like Kolshikin, beidach, the other man, the Amar Milsad Asher Kavachayim Etarach B'Kasav Lokra. The other man, the Amar, who learned it out from Ganav Yignai, because he holds like Dibra Torah Kalasham Adam. So he would say that even though we could have learned it from a Kavachayim, we also have the pasuk of Ganav Yignai on top of it. He said, Vashel Meshalem Es HaKol. This is like a great plot, because this is basically the basics, where we know all the basics of Shemin, of Dalit Shemin. Vashel Meshalem Es HaKol. Bishlam Shvuro Meisa D'Sev Chiyishal Ish Bimrei V'Nishbar Meis. It says Lagabi, the last parsha talks about specifically a child, and it says, so we say Shvuro Meis, it says Nishbar Meis. Ela Shvuya, if the animal was captured, how do we know that he's going to be chayiv on that? B'shayil minalon. You'll say learn it out. For the fact that we say if the animal broke a leg or if it died, which is an einus, even so he's chayiv. The same thing with the shvuya. Mala shvuya meisa shchein einsa de solak adaitahu. Time b'shvuya shchein einsa de solak adaitahu. Those things are relatively normal. That an animal should break a leg or it should die, but that it's going to be captured by an army or whatever the case, or by a roving gang of thugs, it doesn't occur to anyone. It's less normal. So maybe that is even a bigger einus, and therefore it'd be potter. Just like as far as Shem Mesachar, a shvuya, which is, like we said, a bigger einus. If a Shem Mesachar is potter on shvuya mesa, he's certainly going to be potter on shvuya. So just like shvuya is put together with nishbra mesa by a Shem Mesachar, it's also going to be put together, have the same din by a shah. It's like the Gemara, ikal lemefrach mal Shem Mesachar shein liftar time b'shah shein l'chiyuv. So the Gemara, it's obviously the only reason why shvuya is together. We know that it's together with nishbra mesa is because it's a bigger einus. So where it's liptur, that makes sense that it's together. But how do we know it's together by the shayil? Elakar of Nasa, the Tanya of Nasa Naima. Oy l'rabba shvuya. It says oy nishbra oy mesa nishbra v'nishbra oy mes. The oy comes to tell you also shvuya. Hi oy mi bayale l'chalak. Gemara says, how can you use the oy for that? We need it for a different reason. To be mechalik. The sakra mean ada mitra mesa until it's both broken and died. It has to break its leg and die in order for the shayil to be chayiv. But maybe if it just died, or if it just broke its leg, he'd be potter. Kamash malon. So that's why we have the word oy. Sakumar. Hanichal Rabbi Yonason. This is good according to Rabbi Yonason, who says we don't darshan. We wouldn't say that it's lachalik. We would say if it says a vav or an oy in between, we would always assume that it's two separate things. So according to Rabbi Yonason, this is not a kasha. El Rabbi Yoshe ma'ikal amen. The Tanya. This is where we see the shittas. Rabbi Yonason and Rabbi Yoshe. Isha yikal es ave bes ima. A man who's makal his father and his mother. Enli ela ave v'imai ave b'loy imai imai b'loy ave minayin. How do we know l'chalik that he doesn't have to do both of them, but either one of them? That oy means either, and it doesn't mean and. The pasuk says, in addition to es ave bes imai, it says ave v'imai kil. Ave kilo imai kilo. Divrei Rabbi Yoshi. So Rabbi Yoshi Ataka would assume that when we say two things with a conjunction in between them, we would say it's possible that it means that you have to do both of them. When the pasuk says aviv v'imai, or like in our case it says nishbar umeis, nishbar imeis, that would mean both. It means either if they're done separately or both together. We wouldn't assume that the pasuk is coming to be mechal. until the Torah says specifically that has to be both of them. An I in between would not be a conjunction. It would not be and, it would be or. But in any case, so according to Rabbi Yonason, it's good, but Rabbi Yoshia, we have a problem. According to Rabbi Yoshia, how do we know that we need the I for something else? So where do we see Shvuya? Afilu Tem Rabbi Yoshia, L'chalek. Hachalek Tzarech. Even Rabbi Yoshia says L'chalek. But over here you don't need. My time is Svaru. Mali Kala Kula, Mali Kala Palgo. If we're saying, now there's different ways of understanding this. We could say either he says that the I over here would not mean one or the other. You have to do both. Because once we say nishbra, that it broke, he's mechoyev, if the animal broke itself, broke a leg ba'inus, certainly he's going to be chayev if the whole animal died. So how could you say you need to do both? That's one way. Or else you could say it's nishbra, if the animal broke its leg, he's chayev. If it's shvuya, where the whole thing is gone, he certainly should be chayiv. There's no reason to be mechalek. He should be chayiv on that, just misvara. So we wouldn't say over here, oy is l'chalek. Or even if oy is mechalek, but we don't need a separate pasuk to tell you shvuya. So the Gemara, gneva v'aveda b'shoyel minala. The Gemara, like we said, we have the three parshias, and we said that a shoyel, someone who borrows, is chayiv for everything. He's chayiv whether it was a gneva aveda, he's chayiv if it's an oinus, but the Torah only mentioned nishbar meis. It doesn't say anything about gneva aveda. So how do we know shayel is chayiv on it? If you'll say, since the Torah said he's chayiv for shvuro mesa, so certainly he's going to be chayiv for gneva aveda. Shvuro mesa is a bigger oinus than gneva aveda. He's chayiv if he has to pay by nishbar mesa, then he certainly pays for gneva aveda. You say, no, Mal Shmuel Mesa, Mitrach Vasuya. Maybe Gneva Vaveda he's going to be potter on because the owner can go ahead and find it. So maybe, even though he's chayiv for Einstein, but maybe he's potter on Gneva Vaveda because the owner has the possibility of retrieving it. How do we know Gneva Vaveda? Amit Kal V'Chayim. U'Mashem Esacha. Shapata mishvur mesa chay b'gneva aveda. Shel shachay b'shvur mesa in adin shachay b'gneva aveda. Make a kal v'chaymer from a shem esachar. If a shem esachar is who's chayiv on gneva aveda is potter by nishbar meis, a shayil who is chayiv on nishbar meis and oinus, which is a bigger oinus than gneva aveda, certainly he's going to be chayiv on gneva aveda. Zel kal v'chaymer she'enu lav tshuva. And the Gemara says this is a ironclad kavachimer that can't be broken. My anal of tshuva. Gemara says, so this obviously the Gemara is not going to take this line down. It's not going to be so simple, and everyone's just going to go home because it said there's no tshuva. So what were you trying? What would you have thought would have been the tshuva? Maybe a shem esachar has a mila over a shayil that he pays kefil when he says that it was stolen from him by listim mezuyim. A shayil, a shem esachar is chayiv, is potter on oinsim. So he's going to be chayiv for gneva v'aveda, but he's potter on oinsim. A listim mezuyim, an armed robber, is an oinus. It's not something that's expected. So a shem esachar could potter himself by saying it was stolen by armed robbers, and in that case, if it turns out he was lying, he's going to have to pay kefil. So maybe that's a chumrah of a shem esachar. Now we've already been down this road before when we were comparing shem echinim to a shem esachar. So the Gemara says the same teretz like we said before. Afilu hachi kana d'shayil adifa. Like we concluded before, it's always better to be able to get off on the keren by saying that this didn't happen, rather than it's not a chumrah of a shem esachar that if he were to lie, he'd have to pay kefil. It's like it's hard to understand the whole thing because it's only because he lied he has to pay. Because he was a ganef, he has to pay kefil. That's not a chumrah. That's someone who's a thief. We should look at it based on a regular.
Check the terrace. The kasha is that the havmin is although the mice the bottom line.
There is some chumrah.
Shaykh, there was somebody do this kind of chumrah. Kefil's shaykh over here, and Kefil isn't shaykh over here. So the answer is no. It's for
But in the bottom line, everyone's always going to prefer to be putter on a gneva v'aveda as long as I'm honest, rather than be putter from kefil if I'm dishonest.
That is a teretz.
Yeah, it is a teretz, but it's just what was the question? Ibay saying kasava list of mezuyim gazlanhu, or else you could say no, list of mezuyim it will never come to be that a shemesacha would pay kefil because list of mezuyim is not a ganef. Ganef is someone who steals hiddenly, and that he pays double. But someone who accosts you in the street and takes you openly, he's a gazlan, doesn't pay kefil. A list of mezuyim, an armed robber, it's a little bit of a shayla because the list of mezuyim he's sort of hiding behind his gun. So maybe, but he holds list of mezuyim is a gazlan, so therefore he wouldn't pay kefil anyway. So we said we found that Legabi Gneva Ashayel is going to be Potter on Gneva Vaveda. I'm sorry, Shayel is Chayiv for Gneva Vaveda and for Nishbar Meis. We know that a Shayel is going to be Potter, however, on Einis. The Torah said he's going to be Potter if in Bal of Imai. That there's a Ptur of Bal of Imai on a Shayel when there's an Einis. But how do we know that this Ptur extends to this din of Gneva Vav, that a Shayel is Chayiv on Gneva Vaveda? How do we know that if he's Bal of Imai, he's going to be Potter also on Gneva Vaveda? The Torah didn't mention that. All the Torah said directly was a Shayel is Chayiv in Einzig, and he's Potter in Bal of Imai. We just learned that a Shayel is also Chayiv in Gneva Vaveda because we learned it out from Hashem Esacha with the Kavachai Meshayin Love Tshuva. How do we know that the tour of Bal of Imai also extends to what we learned from Hashem Esacha that a Gneva Vaveda by a Shayel is Chayiv? If you'll say, just like Shvuro Mesa, he's going to be Potter and Bal of Imai, so the same thing with Gneva Vaveda. Mal Shvuro Mesa, Shechein Einis. How could you say that because he's Potter for Bal of Imai by an Einis, he's also going to be he's going to be Potter by Bal of Imai by Gneva Vaveda? There's more liability by Gneva Vaveda. It's more Chomer. We learn out from the din of Hashem Esacha that Hashem Esacha is Potter for Bal of Imai by Gneva Vaveda. So like the Mav Hashem Esacha Gufa Minolan. How do we know Hashem Esacha itself? How do we haven't addressed it so far over here above Metzia, Perak Hashelas Apara. So where does it come from? This is like a Robius strip. We learn out that which Hashem Esacha is going to be Potter by Bal of Imai from the Chiyuv of Shayel, just like Shayel. Malalom b'Bailam Potter, Avkam b'Bailam Potter. The Chiyuv of Shem Esacha of Gneva Vaveda, we're going to learn out from a Metzia, just like we find that a Shayel is Potter Bal of Imai by Einis, a Shem Esacha will be Potter by Bal of Imai Gneva Vaveda. So, but my gomer, how are you learning it out? Iba Metzia, if you'll say just like, it's just like you say, why not? Why should it be any different? I could ask you a kash. Maybe a shayel is potter by Bal of Imai because he's chayiv by an einis. He's doing less. He's less responsible. That's why Bal of Imai is potter. How do you know to extend it to Shem Esachar by Gneva Veda with his more responsibility? It's not a memotzinu. It's a limit. It's a hekesh. So the vav tells you to compare Shem Esachar to a shemer to a shayel, and that's how we know that a Shem Esachar on Gneva Vaveda, he obviously can't be talking about Einis by a Shem Esacha because he's Potter on Einis. It's talking about where a Shem Esacha is Chayav, which is Gneva Vaveda, and he'll have the same heter of Bal of Imai, just like a Shayel. And we learn out the case of Elyon, the first one of Shem Esacha Mitachtan from the Shayel. Vakati Shayel Mishem Esacha Leigama. So this is all. We said we learn out Shayel by Gneva Vaveda from Shem Esacha, and then we asked, how do we know Shem Esacha itself? We said we learned out Shem Esacha by Gneva Vaveda from Shayel. How could you learn out the Gneva Vaveda of a Shayel from the Gneva Vaveda from a Shayel Esacha? Vakati Shayel Mishem Esacha Legama the Ikel Mivrach. Mal Shem Esacha Shechem Potter B'Shvuru Mesa Time B'Shayel Shechaya B'Shvuru Mesa. I might say Shem Esacha is Potter from Bal of Imai by Gneva Vaveda, because he has, in general, he has a mokula dikadin that he's potter and einstein, but a shayl is not. So how could you learn out a shayl from a shemasacha? Elava gneva aveda b'shayl l'chiyuva minalan. How do we know that a shayl is chayiv and gneva aveda? The gam b'shemasacha. You learn out from shemasacha. Dialov and bedin lias kanadin. Magna aveda shemasacha b'baylam potter av gneva aveda shall nami b'baylam potter. Where do we learn out altogether that gneva aveda is chayiv by a shayl? We learned it out from a kal v'chaymer from a shemasacha. A shemasacha. His, like we just said, we learn out from Shoyl that the Gneva Aveda of a Shemus Sachar is limited, that it's not high, but it's potted by Baal of Imai. So we say, Daye. If you're learning out the din of Gneva Aveda from Shoyl from a Shemus Sachar, it can only have the rules that are applicable to a Shemus Sachar. Haniklaman Islay Daye, Laman Leslay Daye, Michael Amema. Alama Krav, Chiyishal, Vav, Moisav, Al Nishu. Eli Mitach, Mitach, Me Aldian. The Gemara says no. So the Vav that we said where we learned out originally for that a Shemus Sachar is going to be Chayiv for Gneva Aveda also goes the other way around, and it teaches from a Shemus Sachar to a Shayl that is going to be potter on the ball of Imai of Gneva Aveda. Okay, we're going to stop over here. I know this is we're going back and forth over itself. It's really not so hard. It's very logical. They're really fun. What? Take care. What are we talking about here?
Why have this Mishnah? It's very interesting. You're saying for the Ola of the Kairos and the Kalkaiman.
Why is it here?
After Shemim over here. What did the Mishnah talk about that made us think?
Well, we started with the din of Baal of Imai.
Okay.
This is what we're just talking about now. And maybe we'll work our way back to get to Baal of Imai. I mean, in order to. Yeah.
Yeah, talk to me. Probably.
I don't know, where else should it be?
Yeah.
I think this is like a big second seder, of maybe elementary school. They learn this pair. They want to teach kids.
Yeah.
I think they do it here.
Be a good one.
I think so. Yeah.